Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of June 8th, 2022, and welcome everyone back into the City Council chambers. The City Council will be conducting our weekly council meeting hybrid. This will allow us to reach members of our community who wish to participate via Zoom and those who wish to attend in person in the chambers this evening. It is our hope to continue this format to be as accessible as possible to our community. For those who wish to participate via Zoom, you may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you go to register here to provide comment via Zoom, you will need to fill out the form completely if you wish to provide public comment at a future meeting. After the public comment form is submitted, you'll receive an email confirmation with a Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link number to speak, but will still participate the day of the meeting by coming in person to the council chambers up to right before the meeting starts. Please note that we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office, and we also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Excused.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Excused.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Excused.
Vice President Tui.
Here. Now I would like to ask Councilmember Ryan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for that. Now I would like to ask Councilmember Vogely to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you much. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Shahoksh people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you for that. Now, do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of May 25th, 2022?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Seconded.
Okay, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Abstain.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Abstain.
Vice President Tui.
Yes. The mayor is not here this evening, so I will move on to public comment. Deb, do we have anyone signed up this evening to speak?
Vice President Tui, we have nobody signed up to speak, and we've received no written comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to council comments and liaison reports. We'll start with tonight with Councilmember Ryan.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Happy sunny day in Everett. Yesterday, another beautiful day. I had a chance to do a parks tour, which was really amazing to join up with the parks commissioners and go around to a few parks that either have just finished some capital projects or just about to finish. So getting to see the almost near finished works ready to go, including the dog park down at Lowell, which is going to be a really amazing space for folks using the trail and in the neighborhoods, and also the Doyle Park. The second half is near completion, and the sidewalk's almost done too, which is really awesome for walkability in the neighborhood. And we kicked things off down in Councilmember Zarlingo's neighborhood at Sullivan Park. It's at its 125th birthday, I believe, if I remember that correctly. And so there's a lot of really great plans for a walking pathway around the lake, and so we got a chance to take a peek at all of that. And as we were driving around, we saw Councilmember Zarlingo in action chatting with a neighbor in their driveway, so that was really great to see that. Let's see, I also want to give a heads up because this weekend is really busy in the city. It's going to be awesome, and hopefully the weather will cooperate, fingers crossed. So Sorticulture's this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's back downtown, and there's going to be a number of amazing vendors and entertainment, and Cisco Morris is going to be there, which is everybody's favorite favorite horticulture celebrity. On Saturday is the Clean Everett Day, so I really encourage folks to get in touch with their neighborhood association or to reach out to Nicole Weber with the administration. It's a great time to clear out some debris that's maybe on your street or at your local park or in your driveway or in the alleyway. There's going to be 4 dumpsters across the city, and you can dump your stuff for free. There are a number of things that aren't accepted, so take a look at the list to see what is and isn't accepted at those sites, but it's a great way just to put Everett on a good path for the summer and clean streets and whatnot, so really excited about that. They also need volunteers to staff the dumpsters, so I believe it's everettwa.gov/clean, if I remember correctly, is the website, so you can go and sign up to be a volunteer. Also on Saturday, the Everett Public Library is kicking off their summer reading program. I mentioned it last week during my comments. There's a bunch of different great programs that the library is offering this year. So kick-off events from 10 to noon at the main library branch and 3 to 5 at the Evergreen branch. So check it out if you get a chance, no pun intended. Also on Saturday is at the Snohomish County Courthouse is the March for Our Lives rally and protest, so it's going to be a busy space there as well. Folks are starting to gather at 11:30, and I believe the speakers and the event officially starts at 1 p.m., so just to mention about that. And then on Sunday, the Everett Animal Shelter is hosting Huskies on Parade, an adoption event for Huskies and Husky mixes. The event goes from 11 to 1, so if you're looking for a new dog and want a Husky, head on down, or if you want to check out the adorable Husky parade, that starts right at 11. So, and last but not least, happy birthday, Councilmember Vogely. Thank you.
All right. Happy birthday, Councilmember Vogely. It's your turn now.
Awesome, thank you. So I missed the past couple of meetings due to being infected with COVID the first time. So anyways, so there's that, and I'm better now, and the kids are better, so there you go. It is my birthday, and I'm here. So I figured out that I got COVID, right? And then I was sick all day, and I'm getting to a point. The next day I woke up, and that was the Uvalde, Texas shooting, and of all of those children. And so that 2 weeks was just kind of filled with angst and depression and all of that. So I just want to now that people may have forgotten about it already, the horrible gun violence that our country has an issue with. I'm just sending out all of the good vibes to all of the folks that are affected by gun violence. I personally am a gun violence survivor. And I didn't write it down to talk about, but it hurts, and so let's make some laws, people, and lock up your weapons if you have them. Not too difficult to do. And happy Pride Month. I know that the county did some things, and that was exciting, and I'm sure Everett has too, but I also missed, the beginning of June. And glad to be here on my birthday, and I got a record player, and so now my age matches one of the rates of speed, so you can guess. And that is all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Last week I met with owner Chad Volpe and general manager Dennis Tetzlaff of the Aqua Sox. I like the scale of minor league baseball. It's multidimensional fun that's appropriate for all ages. It's local and much less expensive than major league sports. And Everett in particular is fortunate, unlike cities like Boise, in that we've kept our team during the recent consolidations. Even if you're not a baseball fan or don't make it to the games, the team is an amenity for community members, helps raise the profile of Everett, and brings tourism and overnight stays to the city. That's in addition to the significant number of full and part-time jobs directly associated with the Aqua Sox. And also important, it makes the Aqua Sox help make the fullest use of our city's school district facilities, since Funko Field is part of Everett Memorial Stadium, school district property. And finally, the Funco field improvements, including those to the field itself and to the training facilities that are paid for by the AquaSox, become part of school district facilities for use by all. So a real win, a neat thing to have in our community, whether you're a baseball fan or not, and kind of reassuring to see baseball at a human scale as opposed to the major leagues where these guys are all just nearly perfect. Also, a quick note, following up last week's announcement that by the Board of Health that the Snohomish County Council has unanimously voted to withdraw from the existing health district and reform it as part of Snohomish County government, effective about the first of the year. Our community members should see little or no immediate change, and current employees of the district will transfer to the county employment. So longer term, the new organization is going to be better able to enhance the level of services they offer. So I think this is overall good news, but a real evolution. We're one of the last of the major counties that has had a separate health district. And that's all for me. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
Thanks, short and sweet. Thank you to Councilmember Vogely for sharing your story. And happy birthday. And thank you for Councilmember Ryan for covering all the stuff that I no longer have to cover about our events going on this weekend. And woo, Sorticultures, you all there getting all fan kid over Cisco. So yeah, I'll be there.
All right, thank you. I just have a couple things. Last week, we did, the Housing and Homelessness Committee did meet with staff, and we had a great update on the progress of our approved ARPA funding projects, and nothing new to report yet, but I'm sure we will in the next few months. I also was able to attend a ribbon cutting of a new business downtown. It's called Petrichor, It's a general store for modern dwellers. It's a great little shop at 2816 Rucker, so it's very hip. You kind of feel like you're downtown shopping in Ballard a little bit, so really fun, really want to spread that news. And before we move on, I realize that I think we approved the minutes of May 25th, which we already did that last week, so I would like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of June 1st, 2022.
Councilmember
Second.
Ryan moves again.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
Second.
All right, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Abstain.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Abstain.
Vice President Tui.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
No administrative update tonight.
Thank you. And our city attorney, Ms. Diaz?
Thank you. No report and no executive session.
Okay. Do we have a motion now for the consent items?
So moved.
Councilmember Ryan seconds.
Thank you. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes. Now moving on to the proposed action item. This is the first reading, so I will read the item. Number 5, Council Bill 2206-19. First reading, adopt the proposed ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Lexington Drainage, Fund 336, Program 030. The third and final reading will be on June 22nd of 2022. So I don't believe we have any briefing here on this. Do we have any questions from council members? Okay, great. Well, we'll move on to our briefing agenda. These items come before the city council, serving as a council committee of the whole, and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. We do have 2 items. I'm going to read both of them, and then we'll have staff do the presentation. So item number 6 is the Stormwater Management Action Plan, High Priority Basin Prioritization and Selection. And number 7 is Council Bill 2206-20. First reading, adopt the proposed ordinance adding a new chapter 14.28 surface and storm drainage to the Everett Municipal Code to be effective August 1st, 2022. The third and final reading on this will be June 29th of 2022. And I'd like to introduce Ryan Sass, who will start us off.
Good evening, Ryan Sass with Public Works. Happy to be here. I have the rare and nice opportunity to get to introduce almost our entire surface water team tonight. As you're aware, Public Works and our mission is subject to various regulatory environments and constraints. Surface water management and storm drainage is an area of our work that probably is experiencing the most dynamic and the greatest change and rapidly increasing regulatory environment. It's rapidly changing, our requirements are steadily increasing. As a result, tonight we have two briefing items for your information and consideration. The first is the development of a stormwater management action plan, which is a new requirement under our municipal surface water permit. And Dana Zlatiff, our surface water compliance specialist, will be presenting on that. And then the second is a significant update, really a rewrite to our surface water and storm drainage code. Dana again and Eric Emerson, Senior Surface Water Engineer, will be presenting on that item. And Heather Griffin, our Surface Water Manager, is also here, so you've got almost the whole team. So, Dana?
I'm going to pull my presentation up here. All right. Well, as Ryan introduced our topic tonight of stormwater management action planning, and a great segue into what I'm really here to talk about with the requirement. I like to always start with that of how we're leading off on this effort, and then into the goal, and then the steps we've taken so far, and then what is to come in the future. So to start, it is, our requirement basis is the Western Washington Phase 2 Municipal Stormwater Permit. This permit's issued to Everett from the Department of Ecology. What's important to note about this, most specifically, is the permit authorizes the discharges of Everett stormwater into the receiving waters of the state. And what is very different from this permit versus industrial or construction permits that ecology issues is it's very programmatic. So our requirements and components are really over 8 elements of this permit. So stormwater planning is a new one. It was added in 2019 when ecology issued this permit to Everett. So that's why we're going to get an introduction to it today. So just to start very high level, the goal of the Stormwater Management Action Plan, or the SMAP, at the end of this project will to develop identify one high priority drainage basin in the city of Everett that will have targeted actions accommodating both growth and development with the goal of improving water quality. Oops. So a successful SMAP strategy, in addition to the permit requirements, identifies strategies to prevent degradation or improve water quality. The difference with the SMAP, or Stormwater Management Action Plan, is really to address impacts from cumulative development across a drainage basin rather than very site-specific. So I'm going to briefly talk about the 3 required elements that we'll be addressing in further slides. Step 1 is a receiving water assessment. It's a very quick assessment of our receiving waters, our basins in the city, and I'll do a slide in a second that overlays that. And we've already completed that step. We are at the receiving water prioritization stage, and then the last stage is actually developing a plan for one high priority basin. So this is a slide that's actually very helpful. These are the 23 basins in the city of Everett. You probably saw this slide back in March of 2022 when we updated our surface water comp plan, and it was here at council. But important to note is Everett has a lot of drainage basins, especially compared to many other jurisdictions. 23 is quite significant. So the light green in the upper part of the slide drain to the Port Gardner Bay, and then the yellow to the Snohomish River, and down south to Lake Washington. So that first step I was talking about is the receiving water assessment. Really, this has already been done and turned into ecology, but what's important about it is it took all this information that we put in our surface water comp plan, and that updated our water quality data, that really looked and took a deep dive in on how our municipal stormwater enters the receiving water and how much, and how we can look at targeting that in the future. So some important elements we looked at this receiving water assessment stage was how big are those 23 basins? The type of land use that is incorporated within those basins, how much of that land use is treated now and how much is untreated entering our receiving waters. And all of that information was basically put into a technical matrix that brought us down to focusing on 4 basins in the city, and this is where we are at this stage. So we have begun our prioritization process to see where we could benefit the most from doing stormwater retrofits in these 4 basins. And it's preliminary right now. So what we have done is started internal and external stakeholder engagement. We have set up an interdisciplinary team in the city who've been meeting for about 1.5 years, really looking at not only the receiving water assessment element, but also the prioritization on what development pressures do we have in these basins now, what are the current and future land use expectations, where do we have opportunities to work with other departments and groups, and also looking at environmental justice and overburdened communities. Both those terms are in the permit as well for outreach and education. So we have started also the external stakeholders in mid-May, where we reached out to target the tribes as well as our local WIRAs and neighborhoods within those 4 basins. We also updated our website to provide some information and created a story map that will walk us through this process from beginning to end. So what's happening next is hopefully by the end of June, that's our requirement, to pick or narrow down to 1 to 2 basins, of which we will develop an actual priority basin plan called a SMAP. In this plan, it will describe and hopefully preferred locations as well within one basin. We will determine if we need land management strategies or policy changes, as well as if there would be a benefit in one of these basins for targeted stormwater management actions. And when I say that, it could be targeted public education and outreach in a certain basin on a certain type of issue to prevent pollution, or operation and maintenance type activities within that basin. The end result also is an implementation timeline, which includes short and long-term timeline and a budget associated with that. So what you will see is coming back to council in early 2023 for an adoption of a stormwater management action plan. And then we are taking comments for the prioritization on the 4 basins through June 20th, but of course, public comment is always welcome and encouraged throughout the SMAP process as it evolves. So if there's any questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Dana. We'll start with Councilmember Vogely had her hand up.
So, okay, first question, why do you have to pick just one? Why do you have to pick just one?
Sure. So the permit at this point has required cities to focus on one priority basin. The reason for that, for the Department of Ecology, is think of it like a pilot basin.
Okay.
What works? What doesn't work? What can we maybe do in the future and it can be replicated? I will say that it's one basin now. Our permit changes every 5 years. It could be another basin in the future.
And with the one piloted, then it'll be easier to assess and implement functions of blah, 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 blah. Okay. So essentially, because we have like the almost entire team here, we have waters, they get into our streets and they go down our, into the drain places, right, that always get clogged with leaves, and then somewhere through pipes and whatnot, that goes to a filtration, or it goes directly to the receiving water, and we have a whole lot of those, 23. Wow, I'm just, kind of given the real dumbed-down version of, so this is what we're talking about, so I can hopefully at least help myself understand. And that's a lot. And so I guess essentially, good job, guys. I don't know how it all gets done, but you are doing it. And it sounds also like everything's interconnected, and we have the city comprehensive plan coming up, and, talking about housing and how we can get the tree canopy and how we can get stormwater, and, you even mentioned codes and how does, it's, I can't wait to be a part of one of those meetings where a lot of the departments gets together, because Parks and Quality of Life is, I'm the chair of. So that's not a question, but thank you for being aware, and thank all of the departments for wanting to work together on all of these things, because we kind of need to, because we need housing and we need runoff places. So thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Zarlingo.
A couple of questions. One of them was in picking the priority basin. Can you give me a summary of the criteria for that? What are the main?
Yes, and I'll summarize it as best I can, and then I always want to say it's on our website. So we have a memorandum right now on our website that shares our receiving water assessment and the methodology that went into that. Some of the most important methodology, I would say, is one, the size of the basin and how much of that basin is within the city of Everett, as well as whether it's a headwater. Also, how many points there are outfalls from the municipal stormwater system to that stream is very important. So how much our city actually contributes to that system. Land use was very important. So we really looked at how much commercial, industrial, single-family, multifamily percentages were in those basins, because each characteristic is associated with a pollutant-type loading. So that was very important as well. And I would say another important element was we're able to really scale how much of each basin has existing treatment. So when you say like a filtration, how much of that basin's treated now and what isn't, and very important, what development may come in and treat that in the future and what will be left untreated. So those were very important methods and assessment tools that we use to narrow it down.
Thank you. One thing, this brings to mind the improvements in State Route 527, partly Everett, and actually almost all Everett at the time, some, 20 years ago. Mr. Sass may remember the widening in the Silver Lake area. And I remember at the time that the road was actually elevated some to provide some altitude to allow some treatment of, I think, some of that area, the water that had never been treated that was flowing into the lake. So there was a real significant benefit that way, just by going from zero, rather from going from one level of treatment to another level of treatment, going from virtually none to a significant level. Is that, are some of these going to be that same kind of thing where there's no treatment at all? Will you prioritize those because that's the biggest difference to make? Or is it on the basis of major developments coming? Are there
So we did, where we are now in this prioritization process is one, really looking at our development pressures and what we're expecting to come in. So we've been working with various departments on what transportation improvement projects are coming in, where is light rail going, where are we going to see a lot of development. And with development, because of the current regulations, we will see stormwater treatment as part of those developments. What we're looking at is where on our map are we not having that in the future. And those basins that we have prioritized, some of which will have areas that still will not be touched. So that's where the prioritization process gets really focused down at this level now, as to see what kind of retrofits can we do and where can they go and how much bang for our buck can we get for these areas.
Okay, great, great. I'll look at the website. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So I was thinking about how the basins aren't aware of our city limits and how they move into neighboring jurisdictions and municipalities. So I was curious if there's neighboring jurisdictions that are also going through this process, and if there's an opportunity to partner or collaborate with that neighboring jurisdiction so that a whole basin is looked at instead of just part of one, or if we're looking at only what's in the city limits and we're collecting stormwater from other local municipalities, how does that relationship work, especially if the part that's coming from local or neighboring areas is coming untreated?
Right. So I'll try to answer that. There's probably two pieces to it. Always collaborating, and we're really aware, especially in our priority basins, what others are doing or may be doing. The unique part of this stormwater management action planning process is there's like 82 jurisdictions, and we're all doing the same thing at the same time, and not everyone's picked anything yet. Or maybe some of our downstream neighbors have, but not everybody. So we do kind of know what's coming and where we can have those collaborations. When it comes, and that also, and I should say, that is something that we're looking at. So for example, in one of our basins, if we have North Creek, and we know that Bothell has chosen North Creek, it is beneficial that we already know what they are doing. But it's also, so we're taking that into account. We do not have a requirement in our permit to have this kind of watershed planning effort. Not to say that we won't in the future, but they really wanted it very municipal controlled focused at this point as a pilot project. Yeah.
And then another question about the pilot project. So then down the road, after it's implemented and studied and reviewed, what are some of the next steps after that? Would we have one more to do every few years, or could we do a series of them at the same time? What's the 10-year goal here?
Right, and I can't answer that. I don't know what the next permit will say. So right now, we're focusing on one, and that's where I would say if the community and the good data comes out of that, and there's good tools that we can apply to other basins, that would be good to hear. And then what the permit may say in the future will also be a very guiding tool for us.
Great. And then last question, if you could expand a little bit more about public comment and how folks can provide public comment, who they should be sending comments to, or the website, or information in general. That'd be great.
That's great. So on our website, in our story map, we have a public comment tool. So easy to fill in with name and comment questions. We also have a clickable map so that you can put your issues or concern in a map or your neighborhood. Or you can also contact me, Dana Zlateff, or anyone in our stormwater group directly with comments. We have a request for those comments at this specific time for June 20th. But again, it's open as this process goes through 2023. March 2023 is when we turn in our actual basin plan to the Department of Ecology. So we'll have our website updated between now and then with new information.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Fosse, do you have any questions?
I wanted to say thank you, Councilmember Ryan, for again asking my questions, and thank you very much for your presentation and the obvious amount of work that went into this to make it really comprehensive. Could you briefly clarify what the next steps are coming before council, what information will be shared with us in this process?
Right, so we are planning to come to you for council adoption of this plan, the Stormwater Management Action Plan, likely very early in 2023.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Dana. I do have one question. So I'm not sure about the funding, and I know with the action plan, you probably don't know at this point what the budget's going to look like, but did the Department of Ecology, did they come up with any granting sources or anything to help communities with this?
That is a great question. Actually, in front of you, probably a few months ago, was a grant from the Department of Ecology. And we did get funding to do this process. We did our receiving water assessment process, that first step as part of our comprehensive plan, but the prioritization and the actual SMAP preparation is all through the Department of Ecology grant.
Great,
Yes,
good to hear. Okay, we'll move on to the next one then. Thank you, Dana.
thank you. Now I just have to find it. Switching topics. Okay, so Eric Emerson and myself will be giving this presentation, so he will be coming up here in a few slides to talk about regional facilities. But I start with this slide again because it is important to understand how much work we do that's in this municipal stormwater permit. I think it's important to know and provide just a little history. Is Everett obtained this permit from Ecology in 2007. And with that very first permit, we had a lot of requirements, and a lot of them were centered around making an effective ordinance for various elements. So that's where we really expanded upon. It's our illicit discharge code, so prohibiting discharges to receiving waters, basically prohibiting pollution, and having a mechanism to enforce upon that. Another big thing in 2007 was an adoption of our stormwater manual. We used the Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington. So those are really big elements that came before. So this permit is updated every 5 years. The last one was issued in 2019, again, with new regulatory implications. So the other thing besides stormwater planning that was added was what's called source control. And I'm going to talk about source control in the next slide. So source control of existing businesses. So source control is just that. It's implementing operation or structural controls at a specific site to prevent pollution at its source before it gets anywhere. So the permit requirements basically say no later than August 1st shall we adopt and make an effective an ordinance requiring the application of source control at existing businesses. And really what the permit is saying is, yes, we need to put an ordinance in place. It's to give us the ability to have the right of entry to inspect on that facility, and the facilities in question are institutional, ourselves, commercial, and industrial at this point in time. It also, the permit is very specific on laying out escalating enforcement. As Ryan mentioned, this is a pretty extensive update to the code. And the reason for that is our stormwater code is in two separate places right now. We have 1428, which is our surface and stormwater drainage code, and we have 1456, which is our surface water system code. Our stormwater information is actually split between those codes right now. And we wanted to take this opportunity while we were updating our source control inspection abilities and enforcement elements to tell a better story in our code. And the way it's laid out now is it's construction, development, redevelopment first, stormwater maintenance and infrastructure, source control, and then prohibiting discharges, so illicit detention and detection, and the last piece is enforcement. So it kind of tells a story all the way through. We also found that 1456, which is our prohibiting discharges, was not in our code enforcement section, only our 1428, which was our design and construction standards. Again, we also did not have enforcement that was escalating. So that was our opportunity to update this. Code cleanup. So with this extended effort, we took the opportunity to update definitions and technical requirements. Right now, the beginning of our 1428 is basically redundant of our stormwater manual, which we've adopted. There are 11 of the 15 pages in our existing code that is rewriting our stormwater management manual, which we have basically removed and have basically said we have adopted this code. It is clear, it's not confusing, and so that was a significant change. And Eric to talk about regional facilities.
One of the other code sections that we found that needed to be updated was a section relating to regional stormwater facilities. Regional stormwater facility is a city-owned stormwater facility that serves multiple properties or a larger area. And the code that was in there was still left over from a program that was initiated in the 1980s. The language didn't match what current language and standards were. In addition to updating that language, we also included a call for an establishment of a regional stormwater facility program. That program would manage and track our regional facilities. As part of that, it calls for updating or implementing the ability to have developers participate in those facilities. It would create a payment in lieu of construction ability so that a developer could purchase extra capacity in our facilities rather than build their own facilities on their site. That would be a voluntary program, so they, a developer on a project-by-project basis would be able to determine if it met their needs and purchase or not. One important thing to note about this, the change to the code doesn't actually implement this program or create this program. It just creates a framework to establish the program, and most importantly, the ability to collect those charges.
I just have one more slide. So as I mentioned, our enforcement capability section we have rewritten. There are a couple items before we really just had issue to enforce on a property owner. It is important to update that to a responsible party. As I mentioned, we have the source control program that's coming online. We deal with a lot of mobile businesses. So a responsible party was very important that we add and update, especially when we have spills or discharges in various nature across the city. So that was one important change. Second, a lot of the items that are on this screen, we do have in our code now. However, it is just unclear, and so we really could not take very much action. So we do currently have stop work and abatement, but now the way that it is written, we have a more of a clear process. We can do that administratively through our own chapter rather than just relying on the EMC 120. It also had a way for the city to recover fees or fines, not fines, associated with that, recovering the cost of the work to repair the corrective action. As you can imagine, with code enforcement, sometimes a fine does not do anything to stop the problem. If there's an active spill or a construction site that is causing an issue, a fine's not going to help at that point in time. So we needed some more tools in our toolbox. Stop work's important for that. Revoking a business license is important for that. Recording to property title is important for that. We have these tools in place, although we rarely ever need them, as part of our escalating enforcement. A prime example is if there's a failing septic tank and there's very difficult inability and there's no owner of the house and it's stuck in foreclosure, that is the time that you need to have the ability to put a recording on title so that a new owner understands what is happening on that site. We did some research with other jurisdictions as well as worked with a consultant, Herrera, to determine where we had gaps in our existing code and what we needed to do. So now we feel like we have tools that will assist us in various situations that may occur. I should say that we, as a city, we really do lead with technical assistance with all the issues that occur, but there are time and place for those 5% that really do need an enforcement arm that we have the ability to adhere to. So, and with that, if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you for that again. We'll see if we have any, we have Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yeah, I was very interested to hear about the regional stormwater facilities. I recently went and saw the Everett's water pollution control facility, and really remarkable place in terms of both its capacity and the sort of discipline and control they have, the ability to make sure they're doing water treatment right. So I see some real benefits with that kind of thing, but I'm trying to understand how if the water runoff is generated in areas distant from that facility, will there be other regional facilities, or will it be, how will you get that water? If they pay for enhancement of a facility, how do you get the water where it's going to be treated?
Yeah, fair enough, yeah, and we're not talking something on that scale. These would be facilities that are more neighborhood level or sub-basin.
A few square miles or something
Yeah,
like that?
or less. It could be as small as a few parcels in a road or just wherever, the real goal is to catch that water before it's discharged to the receiving water and provide treatment for whatever's draining to that.
So by region, in that case, maybe it was, if you knew development that was coming in an area of 3 or 4 parcels or facilities, they might get together, and instead of each having to create an individual facility, they could get together with something that the city was creating to do the water treatment?
Yes, or if through our other processes, we were building a facility anyway, somebody came later, this would give them the ability to buy into that with the goal of, it's pretty easy when you're doing it the first time, just add a little more space in there.
Sure.
And then, that's a benefit to anybody that's coming along later.
But in all these cases, the money they pay would go toward treatment. It wouldn't change the fact that their water would need to be treated, any pollutants would need to be removed as part of this problem. Okay, great, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Vogely.
This is reminding me that stormwater parks are a really fun part of this, what some might call boring work, but I wouldn't. So stormwater parks, yay. And I was actually having a conversation with a housing person, and we were kind of talking about this specifically, so I'm really glad that it's come before us this week. And having the enticement is not the right word, but having the ability for developers to buy in, for lack of a better term, larger capacity pipes, and, just getting that all together, and that, again, like I said before, with the comprehensive plan and land use and all of that. So yay, just thank you.
Thank you. It's questions for Eric. Sat down too quick. It's a question about the fee. I was wondering how it's calculated, and if that's at the direction of maybe like the Department of Ecology, or who sets the fee, I guess. So just share a little more about that, please.
Sure. We haven't determined that yet. That's part of the next step of the process. And I did fail to mention that the intent is to come back to you once that program is ready to go and then for your approvals. And that would include the process for establishing that fee and how it was going to be charged. Yep.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Fossey, any questions?
No questions or comments, just thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, and I have no further questions or comments either. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And with no further business and no executive session, we are adjourned.